Some miracles do not arrive with light. Sometimes they arrive through silence, through blindness, through waiting for a moment that never seems to come. I learned that truth the day I realized I could no longer see the world I once controlled. My name is Ethan Brooks, and I used to believe that vision was something the body either had or lost. I never believed it could disappear from life itself. Until it did. The accident happened years ago, but the memory still lives inside me like a sound I cannot turn off. One moment I was driving through rain-soaked streets outside Chicago, the next everything went white, then black, then nothing at all. When I woke up in the hospital, doctors spoke in careful voices, avoiding certainty. They told me my optic nerves had been damaged beyond repair. They told me I would have to adapt. I told them I did not want to adapt. For a long time after that, I lived in a world made entirely of sound and memory. My company continued without me in the way a machine continues running after its owner leaves the room. Meetings happen without my presence. Decisions were made without my voice. People learned how to speak around my blindness instead of to it. I could hear it in their hesitation, in the way they explained things more slowly than necessary, as if slowness could restore what had been lost. But nothing restored it. Not medicine. Not therapy. Not time. There were doctors who promised improvement. Specialists flown in from different states. Experimental treatments that sounded like hope but ended like silence. One by one they failed. Eventually they stopped promising anything at all. That was when I understood the truth I had been avoiding. Some losses are not temporary. They become permanent residents inside your life. I learned to navigate my world by sound and routine. The office building I used to command became a space I moved through carefully, guided by assistants and familiar voices. I memorized the distance between my desk and the window by counting steps. 22 steps to the glass where I used to watch the city move. I stopped counting after a while. There was no point in measuring something I could no longer see. The only thing that changed over time was the absence of expectation. I stopped waiting for recovery. I stopped waiting for improvement. I stopped waiting for anything at all. Until one morning something unusual happened. My assistant mentioned a trip scheduled to a small rural region in Montana, a charity initiative connected to one of our development projects. Normally I would have declined, but something in the way she described the location made me pause. Quiet place. Small community. Temporary medical outreach program. Families who needed assistance. I do not know why I agreed. Maybe because my life had become so predictable that even the idea of unfamiliar air felt like movement. The journey itself was uneventful. I remember the sound of the plane engines more than anything else. I remember being guided through unfamiliar rooms when we arrived. I remember voices introducing themselves without faces attached to them. And then I remember something else. A feeling I had not experienced in years. A sense that something in the room had shifted before anyone spoke. I stood near the entrance of a community center, surrounded by unfamiliar sounds and distant conversations, when I heard a small voice. A child's voice. Clear. Direct. Almost certain in a way that did not belong to hesitation or fear. "He is here," the voice said softly. "The man who cannot see." I stopped walking. Not because of fear. Because of something I could not explain. The room felt quieter after those words, as if everyone had suddenly become aware of something invisible standing in the center of it. I turned slightly toward the direction of the voice. I did not know yet that this moment would become the first fracture in the life I had accepted as permanent. I did not know yet that everything I believed about loss, blindness, and endings was about to be rewritten in a way I could never have imagined. The voice stayed in the room longer than it should have. A child's voice does not usually carry weight in a place filled with adults, medical staff, and structured schedules. But this one did. I turned slightly toward the direction where I believed she stood. My vision remained the same. As always, darkness without texture, silence without shape. Yet something about her presence felt unusually defined, as if the air itself had become more precise around her. "Who said that?" I asked calmly. My assistant hesitated before responding. "It is one of the children from the local program, Mr. Brooks. A few families are visiting the center today." There was a short pause. Then I heard footsteps. Small ones. Light and unhurried. Not afraid. Not uncertain. They stopped somewhere in front of me. "You are the blind man," the voice said again. Closer now. Clearer. I did not respond immediately. I had spent years being spoken about rather than spoken to. There was something unsettling about being addressed directly by someone who did not seem intimidated by what I had lost. That is what people call me, I said finally. What is your name? There was a pause. A very small one. Lily, she said. The name meant nothing at first. Just a sound. But the way she said it carried something unusual. Like she was not introducing herself, but confirming something she already knew. Lily, I repeated. Are you here with your parents? My mom, she answered. She is helping here. I nodded slightly, even though she could not see it. The room around us continued moving. Quiet conversations. Papers being shuffled. Footsteps in the distance. But somehow everything felt further away now, as if the space around me had narrowed into this single conversation. Why did you say I was coming? I asked. I did not expect a clear answer. Children rarely explain themselves in ways adults understand. But she answered without hesitation. Because I knew. A faint tension moved through the room. I could sense it even if I could not see it. Adults always become uneasy when certainty comes from places they cannot explain. How could you know that? I asked gently. There was another pause. This one longer. Not uncertain. Thoughtful. I see things before they happen, she said. The words should have sounded like imagination. Or play. Or confusion. But they did not. They sounded like belief. I exhaled slowly. I had met doctors who spoke about probabilities, specialists who spoke about damage, experts who spoke about limitations. But I had never heard anyone speak with this kind of certainty about something so impossible. That is a big thing to say, I replied carefully. Most people do not believe that kind of thing. You will, she said simply. There was no challenge in her voice. No attempt to convince me. Just certainty. Pure and unpolished. I felt something shift in my chest. Not emotion exactly. Not yet. More like awareness. The sense that something unfamiliar had entered a space I had long considered closed. Why would I believe you? I asked. She stepped slightly closer. I could sense her presence more clearly now. Small. Still. Focused. Because you are not supposed to be blind forever, she said. The words landed differently than everything I had heard in years. Not like hope offered by professionals. Not like sympathy offered by strangers. Something else. Something quieter. More direct. I did not speak for a moment. The room remained still around us, as if even sound had decided to pause. Then I asked the only question I could think of. What makes you think that? Her answer came immediately. Because you are my dad. The world did not change in that moment. There was no sudden return of light. No dramatic shift in reality. But something far more unsettling happened instead. For the first time since I lost my sight, I did not feel like I was standing alone inside my darkness. I did not move for several seconds after she spoke. The words stayed suspended in the air like something fragile that might disappear if I reacted too quickly. Because there are moments in life that feel too precise to be accidental. And that was one of them. Say that again, I said quietly. Not because I misunderstood her, but because my mind refused to accept the shape of what she had said. You are my dad, the child repeated. Same tone. Same certainty. No hesitation at all. Around us, the room continued functioning as if nothing unusual had been spoken. Paper rustled somewhere to my right. A chair shifted behind me. A soft voice called for a nurse in the distance. But inside that small circle of space between me and this child, everything else felt irrelevant. Lily, I said slowly, testing the name again as if it might unlock something hidden in memory. Why would you think that? There was a pause. I could sense her shifting slightly, as if she were studying me in return. Because my mom told me I have a father who cannot see, she said. And when I saw you, I knew it was you. My assistant spoke softly from the side. Mr. Brooks, maybe we should. I raised one hand slightly. Not angrily. Just enough to stop the interruption. I needed to hear this. Every word. Where is your mother? I asked. Inside, she answered. She is helping the other families. I exhaled slowly. My thoughts were no longer organized in the way I was used to. Blindness had taught me discipline. structure, clarity. But this conversation disrupted all three. How old are you? I asked. 5, she said immediately. 5 years. My mind calculated without permission. 5 years meant a timeline. Possibility. A window that aligned with a period of my life I had never fully examined because there had never been a reason to reopen it. A time when I was not blind. Time when I was not alone. Do you know your full name? I asked. Lily Parker, she said. Parker. The name hit somewhere deeper than I expected. Not recognition exactly. More like disturbance. A thread pulled inside a memory I had kept sealed for years. I remained still. Do you know your father's name? I asked. No, she said softly. Only that he is important. Important. That word felt heavy in a way I could not explain. Who told you I would come here? I asked. She hesitated for the first time. Just briefly. My mom said someone important would arrive, she answered. But I knew it was you before she said anything else. The certainty in her voice did not match imagination. It did not sound like repetition of a story either. It sounded like belief rooted in something deeper than explanation. I turned slightly toward my assistant. We need to find her mother, I said. Now. There was a pause before she responded. Yes, sir. Footsteps moved away quickly. The room around me felt like it had expanded and contracted at the same time. I remained standing where I was, unable to decide whether to step forward or backward. Are you scared? Lily asked suddenly. The question surprised me more than anything else. No, I said honestly. But that was not entirely true. I was not scared of her. I was not even scared of what she was saying. What unsettled me was something far more difficult to name. The possibility that something I had buried without understanding might not have stayed buried at all. What makes you think I am your father? I asked again, softer this time. She answered without hesitation. Because when I touch you, I can see things I have never seen before. A silence followed. Not empty. Not awkward. Heavy with meaning neither of us fully understood yet. I did not respond immediately. I simply stood there, listening to my own breathing, aware that for the first time in years, the darkness around me no longer felt like an ending. It felt like something was about to begin inside it. I still remember the exact moment I decided to move. It was not a decision made by logic. It was something deeper, something closer to instinct. Because standing there in that community center, listening to a 5-year-old child claim I was her father, I felt something I had not felt in years. Not clarity, not certainty, but disruption. The kind that forces everything inside you to shift, even if nothing outside has changed yet. Where is her mother? I asked again, my voice steadier this time. My assistant returned quickly, her footsteps careful on the floor. She is just outside the hall, Mr. Brooks. I can bring her in. I nodded once. Do it. A few seconds passed. In those seconds, I became aware of how unusual silence can feel when it is no longer empty. It becomes expectation. It becomes pressure. It becomes the space where truth either survives or collapses. Lily had not moved from where she stood. I could sense her presence clearly now, small but unwavering. Do you want to sit down? I asked her gently. I am fine, she replied. There was no fear in her voice. Only calm certainty, the kind that did not belong to children her age. Most children would be nervous speaking to strangers, I said quietly. You are not a stranger, she answered immediately. That sentence stayed with me longer than I expected. Before I could respond, I heard the door open again. My assistant's voice followed. Mr. Brooks, her mother is here. I turned slightly in the direction of the sound. Footsteps entered the room. Slower than before. Controlled but not confident. I could tell something about this moment carried weight for her. You can come forward, I said. There was a pause. Then another set of steps moved closer. The air in the room changed subtly. Not physically. Emotionally. Like a door had opened that had been sealed for a long time. My name is Grace Parker, a woman's voice said quietly. It was steady, but underneath it I could hear something restrained. Not fear. Not anger. Something more complicated. Recognition that had been avoided for too long. I did not speak immediately. Because the name did not land like a new piece of information. It landed like something returning. Slowly. Uninvited. Familiar in a way that made no sense at first. Grace Parker, I repeated, testing it, understanding it. Yes, she said softly. I am Lily's mother. The room seemed to narrow around those words. I stood still. My assistant had stepped back. Even the background noise of the building felt distant now. You said my daughter spoke to you, she continued carefully, that she believes something unusual. I turned slightly toward where I believed she was standing. She said I am her father, I replied. There was silence. Not denial. Not confirmation. Just silence that carried too much weight to be accidental. She says a lot of things, Grace finally said, but her voice did not fully support her words. It wavered slightly at the end, just enough for me to notice. Does she? I asked calmly. Another pause followed. Longer this time. I could almost hear her deciding what could be said and what could not. She is a very perceptive child, Grace said carefully. She imagines connections sometimes that feel very real to her. I nodded slowly, though she could not see it. And what about you? I asked. The question caused a shift in the room. I could feel it immediately. What about me? She repeated. Do you believe I am her father? There was no response at first. Only breath. Controlled, uneven. A silence that no longer felt neutral. Felt like resistance. I took a small step forward without realizing it. Not aggressively. Just enough to close distance I had not known existed until now. Grace, I said more quietly, I do not need imagination. I need truth. Another pause. This one heavier than the others. When she finally spoke, her voice was almost a whisper. You should not be here. Those words changed something in the air between us. Not because they were hostile, but because they sounded like recognition disguised as warning. And for the first time since I lost my sight, I realized the darkness I had been living in might not have been empty at all. It might have been hiding something that was finally beginning to find its way back to me. I did not speak immediately after she said those words. You should not be here. Because some sentences are not meant to be answered right away. They are meant to be understood slowly, like something unfolding in reverse. I stood there, facing the direction of Grace Parker's voice, while my mind tried to place her words into a structure that made sense. But nothing aligned properly. Not her tone. Not her hesitation. Not the way Lily stood so quietly beside her, as if waiting for something she already believed was inevitable. Explain what you mean, I said finally. My voice was calm, but it no longer carried the same distance it usually did. Grace did not respond immediately. I could hear her breathing change slightly, controlled but unstable. This is not something you should hear here, she said. Not like this. I tilted my head slightly. Then when? I asked. Silence followed. Not empty silence. Protective silence. The kind that forms when truth has been delayed for too long. I took another slow step forward. The room felt smaller now, not because it physically changed, but because attention had condensed into a single point between us. You came here, I said quietly, because my company is funding this program, because I was invited, because you allowed your daughter to speak to me. I paused. So why am I not supposed to be here? Lily shifted slightly. I could sense her movement near her mother. Small footsteps adjusting position. Still calm. Still certain. Mom, Lily said softly, tell him. The words were simple, but they carried pressure. Not childish pressure. Something older. Something that did not belong in a 5-year-old voice. Grace exhaled slowly. Lily, please. Tell him, the child repeated. There was no demand. Only repetition. Like something already decided. I turned slightly toward Lily's direction. What do you want her to tell me? I asked gently. Lily answered immediately. The truth. That word again. Truth. It had been used too many times in too many ways since I arrived here. But none of them had felt complete. Not yet. Grace, I said, lowering my voice. I need you to stop protecting me from whatever you think I cannot handle. I have lived without sight for years. I am not fragile. A pause. Then her voice came, quieter than before. This is not about fragility. That sentence changed the temperature of the room. Not physically. Emotionally. Something tightened in the air. Then what is it about? I asked. She hesitated. For the first time since this conversation began, I could hear uncertainty that was not rehearsed, not controlled, real. It is about what was taken from both of us, she said. The words landed heavily, not because they were dramatic, but because they were precise. I remained still. My thoughts slowed. Not confusion. Focus. Explain, I said again. This time there was no hesitation in my voice. A long silence followed. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. You are not just a visitor here, Ethan, she said. My name. Hearing it from her changed something I did not expect. It made everything more personal, more grounded. You were never supposed to find us like this. I felt something inside me tighten. Not fear. Not shock. Recognition beginning to form without permission. That is not an answer, I said. That is avoidance. Another pause. Then Lily spoke again, softer now. Mom, he cannot see it, but he will feel it. I turned slightly toward her voice. Feel what? I asked. No one answered immediately. And in that silence, I realized something I had not allowed myself to consider until now. This conversation was not leading toward explanation. It was leading toward exposure of something I had never known existed close enough to touch my life. And for the first time since my blindness began, I was no longer certain that what I could not see had ever truly been gone. I remember the exact moment the silence stopped feeling neutral. It was not because anyone spoke louder. It was because something inside the room finally stopped holding itself together. Grace Parker stood a few steps away from me, and even though I could not see her, I could feel the distance between us shifting in a way that no longer felt accidental. You are asking questions I cannot answer here, she said again, but this time her voice carried something heavier. Not refusal. Fear. The kind that does not come from strangers but from memory. Then answer them somewhere else, I replied calmly. My voice was steady, but I could hear something different in it now. A lack of patience I did not realize I still had. Lily moved closer again. I could tell by the sound of her small steps. He already knows something is wrong, she said softly. I turned slightly toward her. What do I know, Lily? I asked. There was a pause. A very small one. That you are not supposed to be blind, she said. The sentence should have sounded impossible. It should have felt like imagination. But instead it felt like pressure. Like something pushing against a locked door from the other side. I exhaled slowly. People say many things, I said. That does not make them true. But it is true, Lily insisted. No hesitación. No doubt. Just certainty again. I lowered my head slightly, trying to organize the thoughts forming too quickly in my mind. Grace, I said quietly, if you know something you need to tell me now. Silence returned. But this silence was different from before. It was no longer protective. It was collapsing. I could hear her breathing more clearly now. Uneven. Controlled but breaking at the edges. This was never supposed to happen like this, she said finally. Those words struck deeper than anything else she had said so far. Not because of what they revealed, but because of what they confirmed. That something had, in fact, happened before this moment. Something I was not aware of. Something real enough to leave consequences behind. What was never supposed to happen? I asked. My voice lowered instinctively. Not from weakness. From focus. A long pause followed. I could feel Lily standing still beside her mother, waiting. Watching. Not like a child waiting for explanation, but like someone waiting for truth to be acknowledged. You were not supposed to come here, Grace said. Not like this. Not now. That is not an answer, I replied. That is avoidance. A quiet breath left her, almost like surrender trying not to become visible. There are records, she said finally. Things that were never meant to be connected again. My mind sharpened immediately. Records. Connections. History. These were not emotional terms. These were factual ones. What kind of records? I asked. Another pause. Then Lily spoke again. Her voice was smaller now but still steady. The kind that show who I belong to. The words hung in the air longer than anything else that had been said. I did not move. Not because I was frozen. Because my mind was no longer processing the room. It was processing time. Grace, I said slowly. Is she trying to say what I think she is saying? There was no immediate response. That absence of response was enough. I took a small step forward. The floor beneath me felt suddenly less familiar. You need to tell me the truth now, I said quietly. Not fragments. Not warnings. The truth. For a moment I thought she would continue resisting. Then I heard her breath break slightly. And when she spoke, her voice was no longer controlled. Ethan, she said softly, using my name again. You were not blind when she was born. The world did not go dark. It already was. But in that moment it felt like everything inside it finally shifted shape. The sentence echoed through me long after Grace stopped speaking. You were not blind when she was born. I stood motionless, listening to the silence that followed. Because sometimes a single sentence carries the weight of years. Years of absence. Years of questions never asked. Years of truths hidden beneath ordinary days. What are you saying? I asked quietly. My voice sounded different to my own ears. Not angry. Not shocked. Just careful. As if speaking too loudly might break whatever fragile thing had finally surfaced between us. Grace took a slow breath. I am saying there is something you deserve to know. Lily remained close beside her. I could hear the faint movement of her shoes against the floor. She was unusually quiet now. Almost as if she understood the importance of what was about to happen. 5 years ago, Grace continued. Before your accident, before everything changed, our lives crossed paths. A distant memory stirred somewhere inside me. Not clear enough to recognize. Not yet. Just a feeling. A familiar shadow moving behind a locked door. I do not remember, I admitted. I know, she replied softly. I never expected you would. Her honesty made the room feel smaller. More personal. Then help me understand. Another pause. Then I heard papers being unfolded. Documents. Carefully preserved. Carefully protected. After I left Chicago, I never intended to contact you again, Grace said. Not because I hated you. Not because I blamed you. I believed it was the safest choice for everyone involved. The words raised more questions than answers. Safest from what? I asked. She hesitated. From people who wanted control over your life. Your company. Your future. There were things happening around you that you never fully saw. I almost smiled at the irony of that sentence. And you decided that disappearing was the solution? At the time, yes. Her voice carried regret now. Deep and genuine. Then I discovered I was pregnant. The room became completely silent. Even the distant sounds from the community center seemed to fade away. I lowered my head slightly. Not because I doubted her. Because a part of me already knew where this conversation was leading. And Lily? I asked. Yes, Grace whispered. Lily. I heard a small movement. Then Lily's voice. Soft. Gentle. I told you. For some reason, those 3 words affected me more than everything else. Not because they proved anything. Because they came from a child who had never sounded uncertain from the moment we met. There are records, Grace said. Birth certificates. Medical records. Documents I kept hidden all these years. My thoughts moved slowly now. Not resisting. Not accepting. Simply processing. Why tell me now? I asked. Grace released a shaky breath. Because she started asking questions. I listened carefully. And because she kept describing a man she had never met. Another pause. A man who could not see. The words settled into place one by one. Not forming a conclusion yet. Forming a path toward one. Lily stepped closer. I felt a small hand gently touch mine. Nothing dramatic happened. No sudden flash. No miracle. Just warmth. Simple and real. Yet something inside me shifted the moment our hands connected. A feeling I had forgotten existed. Familiarity. Belonging. The sense that a missing piece had quietly returned without asking permission. Dad, she said softly. The word should have felt impossible. Instead, for the first time, it felt like something my heart had been trying to remember long before my mind could understand it. The small hand remained in mine long after the room fell silent. I had spent years learning how to navigate darkness, how to accept absence, how to stop reaching for things that no longer seemed possible. Yet somehow this child had undone more certainty in a single afternoon than 100 specialists had in years. Dad. The word lingered between us. Not demanding anything. Not asking for proof. Simply existing. Grace moved closer. I could hear it in the soft sound of her footsteps. There is more you need to know, she said quietly. I nodded. Then tell me everything. For a moment neither of us spoke. Then she began. After I learned I was pregnant, I tried to contact you. My head lifted slightly. What? I called. More than once. Her voice carried no accusation. Only exhaustion. I left messages. Sent letters. Tried to reach people inside your company. A cold realization moved through me. I never received any of them. I know, she said. At first I thought you were ignoring me. Then I realized something else was happening. The community center seemed to disappear around us. Every sound felt distant now. Someone intercepted them, I said. It was not really a question. Yes. The answer came immediately. At the time there were people around you who controlled access to nearly everything. Your schedule. Your communications. Your personal life. I thought back to those years. Endless meetings. Advisors. Executives. Lawyers. People constantly deciding what information was important enough to reach me. Information I had trusted them to manage. Information that apparently included the existence of my own child. Why did you never try again after the accident? I asked. Grace released a slow breath. Because after the accident, every article described your recovery. Your blindness. The pressure you were already carrying. I convinced myself that appearing with a child would only make everything harder. So you disappeared. I protected her, she replied softly. Or at least I thought I was. Silence followed. Not hostile. Just heavy with years neither of us could reclaim. Then Lily squeezed my hand gently. Mom cried sometimes, she said. Grace immediately exhaled. Lily. It is true, the child answered. You looked at old pictures. My chest tightened unexpectedly. Pictures? I asked. Grace hesitated before answering. The few photographs we had together. Memory stirred again. Not complete. Fragments. A summer evening. Laughter. Sunlight reflecting from water. A woman whose voice felt familiar long before I remembered her face. You kept them? I asked quietly. Every one. Her answer arrived almost as a whisper. Something shifted inside me then. Not anger. The opposite. The realization that despite everything, neither of us had truly forgotten. We had simply been living separate versions of the same unfinished story. Lily stepped even closer. I told Mom you would come. I smiled faintly despite myself. You did. I always knew. There it was again. That certainty. The same certainty she had carried from the beginning. And for the first time I found myself believing her. Not because it made sense. Because somehow she had been right about everything else. Then, she placed her second hand over mine. A simple gesture. Nothing dramatic. Yet in that instant, something unexpected happened. Not a miracle. Not fully. But somewhere within the darkness I had known for years, a faint glimmer appeared. Tiny. Fleeting. Like the memory of light trying to find its way home. The faint glimmer vanished almost as quickly as it appeared. But it was enough. Not because it restored my sight. Because it restored something I had lost long before the accident. Hope. Real hope. Not the manufactured kind offered by specialists in headlines. Something quieter. Something alive. I remained standing there with Lily's small hands wrapped around mine, listening to the rhythm of her breathing and the silence that surrounded us. Did you see something? She asked softly. The question caught me off guard. Maybe, I admitted. I am not sure. Grace moved closer. I could hear it in the careful sound of her steps. What happened? She asked. I turned slightly toward her voice. For a second I thought I saw light. No one spoke immediately. The room became still. Then I heard Grace inhale sharply. Not out of excitement. Out of disbelief. The kind that arrives when something impossible becomes slightly less impossible. Ethan, she whispered. I have not seen light in years, I said quietly. Neither have I, she replied. At first I did not understand what she meant. Then I realized she was not talking about eyesight. She was talking about life. About loss. About all the years we had spent carrying different pieces of the same absence. A few weeks later I returned to Montana. Then I came back again. And again after that. The community center eventually stopped feeling unfamiliar. The small town stopped feeling temporary. Lily made sure of that. Every visit began the same way. She would run toward me the moment she heard my voice and immediately start talking about everything that had happened since the last time I was there. The weather, school, animals she had seen, dreams she had remembered, important things according to a 5-year-old, and somehow important things according to me too. The records confirmed what my heart had already begun to accept. Lily was my daughter. The truth arrived through documents, dates, and evidence. But it settled through something far simpler. Connection. The kind that does not need explanation once it exists. As for my eyesight, doctors remained cautious. Additional examinations revealed changes they could not fully explain. Nothing dramatic. Nothing overnight. Just small improvements appearing where no improvements were expected. Light. Contrast. Shapes. Possibility. Some called it coincidence. Others called it recovery. Lily called it exactly what she had called it from the beginning. You are not supposed to stay blind forever. One evening, months after that first meeting, I sat outside Grace's house while the sun lowered behind distant fields. I still could not see everything clearly, but I could see enough. Enough to recognize outlines. Enough to distinguish light from shadow. Enough to watch a small figure running through the grass toward me. "Dad!" Lily shouted. I smiled before she even reached me. "I am right here." She threw her arms around me and I held her close. Not because I was afraid she would disappear. Because for years I had been the one who was missing. Grace stepped onto the porch a moment later. For the first time, I could make out her silhouette against the evening light. Not perfectly. Not completely. But enough. More than enough. We stood there together as the sky slowly changed color above us. And in that quiet moment, I finally understood something every doctor had failed to teach me. Blindness had never been the greatest thing I lost. Isolation was. The real miracle was not that I began seeing light again. The real miracle was discovering that somewhere inside the darkness, a little girl had been waiting to lead me home.